This is such a fun DIY to do with your kids or your grandkids. And I've just picked up these bottles at the thrift store, but I have seen these at the dollar store too. You just want to make sure that you're going to have a bottle that has a cork or a screw top. We're going to use these graphics that are available in my Etsy store, and they make really great labels for bottles for Halloween. I've mixed up some of my coffee stain. It's just instant coffee and water, and I'm going to dab it all over these labels to give it that aged vintage look. I have them completely dried. I'm going to take my hair dryer and I'm going to dry that piece of paper. You can also use a heat gun if you have that handy. And then I'm going to cut them out to fit our glass bottles. I'm doing 2 bottles today, but I'll use the third graphic on another Halloween project. And these come all 3 on one sheet when you grab them out of my Etsy store. Now that the edges are freshly cut, I want to age them a little bit. So I've got my ink and a little dabber, and I'm going to go all around the outside of that label. Could have also used the coffee stain. So if you don't have any of this type of ink, you can use that to age around the edges. I'm trying to achieve a really grubby looking label, and I think this is working really well to get that look. Before I decoupage, this is a step that I like to do. I'm going to take my Mod Podge mat and I'm going to put a coat over the top of both of the labels that I'm going to be using. This is also really great to do if you're using an inkjet printer so your ink doesn't run. This is a laser printed graphic, so I don't have that issue, but I just like the way that it looks also. It just kind of gives it that matte finish. Now comes the fun part. We are going to make some potion for our bottles. You want to grab some alcohol. I picked this up at the dollar store, and I've got a little funnel, and I'm going to fill it bottle up until it's almost to the top. And then I'm going to get out my food coloring. This is gel food coloring. You can also use liquid, and I'm going to use the green. I've got a little skewer. I'm going to put some of that food coloring on the skewer, put it into the bottle, swirl it around, and that alcohol is going to turn that lovely green color that we're looking for. Just add as much food coloring as you want until you get the desired look that you're trying to achieve. Now we're going to use mica powder. I picked this up at Michael's, but I've also sometimes seen it at the dollar store. You can get it on Amazon. I'm probably adding about 2 tablespoons by the time I'm all finished to get the desired look. Once you have all that mica powder in that alcohol, shake it up. And as you're shaking it, you're going to see it swirl and cloud and look like this magical potion. And then when we put the label on the bottle, it's going to be such a great addition to our Halloween decor. Now, before we put the label on, I'm going to make this look a little bit more vintage and antique. I'm going to take my dollar store twine and I'm going to add it along the neck of the bottle. And I'm just looped it at the top. So after we've finished putting the twine on that we want, we can pull it through the loop and tighten it up. And then you don't have a knot showing in your neck of your bottle. If you can see what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to take that bottom piece of string and pull on it. It's going to pull it in nice and tight, and then you can cut off the little ends, and it's attached to the bottle really well. Now, I didn't like the silver color. I wanted it to look more aged. So I'm going to add some of that Mod Podge matte, and then I am going to grab some cinnamon. The cinnamon's going to give that metal, that rusty look. It's kind of messy, but I'm just going to sprinkle it into that wet Mod Podge and then let it dry. And it's just going to take away from that really stark metal look. Now we're ready to put the label on. I'm going to get the Mod Podge mat and I'm going to go right out to the very edges and attach it where I want it on that bottle. You could also put a Christmas twist on this technique, do some red food coloring and add a Santa label. Great idea. I had these silver and gold glue sticks that I've had in my stash for quite a while and haven't used them on a project yet. And I thought it would be great to use on this. I didn't like that plastic white look at the top, so I'm melting that hot glue and just letting it flow over top, almost so it looks like it's been waxed. And I think that's gonna finish this bottle off really nicely. It's rustic, it's fun. Now let's do our second bottle. I've already put the twine on the top. I've aged it with the cinnamon. I've added the label, but this time we're going to use hand sanitizer. I picked this up at the dollar store. It was $4, I think, for this great big huge container. I've got my funnel and I'm just going to fill up that bottle. This will also work with clear hair gel if you can't get your hands on any hand sanitizer, or you already have some hair gel in your stash. I picked up these plastic spiders at the dollar store. I'm going to use the black ones. And all you do for this technique is I'm going to take a skewer and I'm going to press these spiders into the bottle, place them where I want them in this hand sanitizer, and the hand sanitizer keeps them suspended wherever you put them. So it looks like we have a whole jar full of spiders that is full of venom. Now I used the same skewer that I put the green food coloring in with, and you can see it's kind of tinting that hand sanitizer a little bit, but that's okay. I like the look of that. So here is our two finished bottles that are so spooky looking. I think they'd be fantastic to add to your Halloween decor and so much fun for kids or even adults to put together. Our next upcycle is going to be glass bottles again. I had these 4 glass bottles. I've soaked off the label. They didn't come off completely clean, but that's okay because we're going to paint over them and we're trying to get a really kind of vintage antique spooky feel to them. So I didn't put a lot of elbow grease into it. We're going to spray the glass with some primer. This is bin primer, and it will allow any type of paint that I put on this glass jar to adhere really well. I sprayed all 4 bottles. They're really completely covered. And now we're going to work on the first one. I have got some baking soda paint. I've mixed it together. I have a full tutorial on how to make baking soda paint. I'll put the link of that down below in the description. And I let it dry after I covered it completely. And I've just got some of my coffee stain. And I'm going to stain that baking soda paint to give it that antique feel. Letting it dry, and you can see it's kind of dribbled and I want it looking like it's stained and yucky. Now we're going to set it aside and let that dry while we get our label for this bottle ready. This label is from my Etsy store. It is a witch's brew poem, and we're going to age it too. Now I want the edges to be a little bit ragged, so I'm just ripping them, being really careful not to rip into the graphic all around the outside. And we're going to go back in with our coffee stain again. Coffee stain and Halloween go hand in hand. I certainly use a lot of it this time of year. I'm using a sponge, just going up and down over the paper, letting it pool a little bit here and there. And now my bottle is completely dry. I'm going in with some black acrylic paint, and I'm just flicking it here and there, and it's just going to add another level to that grubbiness. I think it's starting to come together really well, and I think we're ready to put the label on. I'm going to get my Mod Podge mat, and I'm going to put a coat first, again like we did in our other project, on top of it. It's going to prevent that ink from running if you're using an inkjet, or if you're just using a laser jet, it's going to seal it up, and I like that matte look. Once that was dry, I'm putting some Mod Podge on the back of the graphic, and we're going to add it to our bottle. And these graphics are also available in my Etsy store. I actually have a fall and Halloween bundle where you can pick up all of my favorite graphics in a full bundle, and you can craft with them if you're interested in that. And to finish it off, I'm going to seal my whole bottle with that matte Mod Podge, and I'm going to go over that label again. I have some coffee stained cheesecloth, and I think that's going to finish off the top of this bottle really nice. I'm just going to use a little bit of twine. I'm going to coffee stain it to grub it up a little bit, and then I'm going to use it to tie that top of that cheesecloth onto the bottle. And here's our first finished bottle. Stick through because they get better as we go. I've got 3 more to do. Next bottle, I'm going to use my acrylic paint, and I'm going to paint all over that primer, covering it completely. Because we've used the primer before, we can paint this acrylic paint on the glass. If you don't have that primer on first, acrylic paint just painted on glass has a tendency to want to peel right off. Now I've got some bubble wrap, and I'm just painting on some black acrylic paint, and then I'm going to roll that bottle into that plastic wrap, and it's going to create this great texture on this bottle. Now the black is dry. We're going to go in and we're going to add some yellow, and again I'm just going to paint right on this bubble wrap. It doesn't matter if it mixes in a little bit. We're just trying to create some texture, some different looking paint on this bottle, and again just roll it in. This is just something just to have fun with, and of course at Halloween the more grubby and the more spooky the better it is. Now let's get our label ready for this bottle. I'm using Home Sweet Haunted Home coffee mixture again. We're going to age it, and I'm going to put a little bit of acrylic paint in this one. I have used that yellow, and I just think it's just going to add a nice tint to that paper, and just sponge it on, and it just darkened up that coffee stain and gave it, I think it's going to blend in really nice with that bottle. I had some of that coffee and paint mixture left over, so I'm just dabbing it onto the bottle. We're going to set it aside and let it dry. And now we're going to add that Mod Podge to the back of that label and attach it to the glass. Now we're going to seal it all up again. We're taking that Mod Podge mat and we're going over the entire bottle. Now, I thought it needed a little bit more of an embellishment on it, so I had this pressed daisy in from my garden this summer that I used on my flower press, and I'm coating it with some Mod Podge matte so it's not going to fall apart, and we're going to let it dry. And I had this tin that I am going to spray with some matte spray paint. Now let's pull this all together. I've got a piece of ribbon that I'm going to hot glue around the neck of the bottle. And we're going to take that daisy, put a little bit of hot glue on the back of it, and attach it to the top of that bottle. And then we're going to take that tin that I spray painted black. I'm going to use some E6000, and I'm going to put it around the neck of that glass bottle. And then we're going to attach that tin into that E6000. I like to add a little bit of hot glue. It also helps it secure so it doesn't move around as much while it's curing. And we're going to set it aside and let it dry. And this is what we've created. Next bottle, I am going to get my Mod Podge mat and I'm going to put it all over that entire bottle. And then while it's still wet, I went out into my garden. When I'm trying to make that grubby surface, you guys know that I love my sand and my dirt. I got a bunch and I'm going to sprinkle it into that wet Mod Podge and get it completely covered. Set that aside, let it dry, and we're going to work away on our label for this bottle. I've printed it off on my laser printer. Again, this graphic is available in my Etsy store. I love this one. I use it a lot throughout the Halloween season, and I had some of that coffee and paint mixture left over from our last bottle. I'm staining it, and we're going to now just set it aside and let it dry. I'm going to go back in with that stain and dab it on top of the dirt that has dried on that bottle. This is the thing with these projects, especially Halloween. You can just get creative and just mix and match different techniques, and you'll really love the outcome that you can get with some of these. Putting the Mod Podge on top of that label, going to let it dry, and then we're going to attach it to that bottle. And this is a great way to save these glass bottles out of the recycling bin. By the time we're done these, it's hard to believe that it was just a plain glass bottle. And if you're going into a department store to buy decor like this, it is really expensive. So this is, number one, a lot more fun. Number two, it's affordable. Number three, it's original, and not everybody is going to have it. I want to make a custom knob for the top of this bottle. So I'm using the lid that came off of it, and then I had a drawer pull that I'm using my E6000, and I'm going to glue it to the top, set it aside, let it dry, and then we're going to attach it to the top of the bottle. I've added a little bit of that cheesecloth to the top, putting on some hot glue to hold that lid down really tight, and I'm adding some moss. I picked up this whole bag of moss at the dollar store quite a while ago. It goes a long way. I add it to my projects every now and then, and putting on some E6000 onto the top of the lid to add it, adding some hot glue so it doesn't move around, and that finishes off this bottle. Okay, now let's see what we can come up with this bottle. I've got some green acrylic paint, and I'm going to brush it on that entire bottle. And again, if we're using acrylic paint, because we've painted that glass bottle with that primer, it's going to stick really well. Don't try to paint glass just with acrylic paint. It's just going to peel off. Now, while that acrylic paint is still wet, I got out my instant coffee, and I'm just sprinkling it into that acrylic paint while it's wet, and as it dries, it's going to kind of spread, and it looks fantastic. We got our label, and I really liked when I mixed that paint in with the coffee stain the last time, so I'm adding some of that green into this one, painting over this label. Again, it's in my Etsy store. I have a whole Halloween bundle if you want to grab all of these graphics for some of your projects, and I'm putting that Mod Podge on top. We're going to set it aside and let it dry. Now we're ready to put the Mod Podge on the back and attach it to our bottle and finish it off with some embellishments. I had some dried roses and some old dead leaves I added into the top of the bottle. I think this has a really great spooky feel. So that's some great ways for you to upcycle some glass bottles. I would love to know down in the comments which one was your favorite out of these four, and if you like the potion bottles that I did at the beginning that were so easy to do and such a great DIY to do with your kids. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video. And if you love this video, I'm sure you're going to love either of these next two.